What's up, guys? Demius3D here, and this week I have a video on the EQ redo project that I have. I announced it probably about 2 weeks ago online, and there was some interest in it. Something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and just kind of recently the opportunity kind of presented itself, and I've really honestly wanted to do this. When I look back at when I first got into 3D modeling, this was one of the original reasons I got into 3D modeling. It's crazy, right? Like 1999 is when this game came out, and when this game first came out, it kind of enveloped me so much that like I wanted to like create worlds, so much so that when I got out of the military and everything kind of started winding down in terms of my military career, I still wanted to do it, right? I still wanted to I want to make 3D worlds that people can experience and all of that stuff. And in a large part, I've done that. I've got the formal training. I went to college for 3D design and all that stuff. But now I get to kind of tackle what my passion, what brought me to 3D modeling to begin with. I get to go in and remake the first world that kind of really truly made things happen for me in terms of sparking my interest in 3D modeling and world creation and level design. So I'm really excited about this project, and what I'm going to do during this video is just kind of show you where I'm at, how I got here, and hopefully maybe give you a couple timelines of when I expect to kind of be done with some of these zones and the direction I plan on taking it. So, with that, just what we'll do here real quick is just look at what we got on the screen. This is just data that I pulled right from the EQ game file, right? And this is Everquest Peaks. What you're looking at right now is actually the entire zone, minus some props and minus obviously the NPCs and the characters and that type of thing. You're looking at the entire zone with the collision, right? So when you import this kind of stuff, this is going to get kind of techy, so those of you that aren't interested, you might want to fast forward through this. But when you import any kind of 3D information from a game that's already kind of been developed in its own proprietary engine and its own custom engine or whatever, a lot of times it'll be the 3D files will be in kind of a special kind of proprietary 3D file, right? That will just be able to be read through that engine itself. So it's not an OBJ or FBX or those are kind of the two standard ones that most people know of. But it honestly, I don't remember the file format, but it was some file format that I wasn't familiar with. S something. I can't remember what it was. But when I brought it in, when I converted it to OBJ, just a process that I used, it did some really funny things, right? Like I've done this a couple times with a couple different pieces of geometry from other game assets that I've just kind of wanted to break down and kind of look at myself. And almost every time I've ever done it, that conversion process from the proprietary file format to OBJ has always done weird things to the geometry. It separates faces, it makes things, the normals get all weird and jacked up. And that it stood true for this, right? Like when I brought this in, it was just you can't see it, it's a little bit off screen right now, but the amount of faces just in the zone of Everquest Peaks is just under 90,000 faces. When I brought it in, all of those faces separated from each other, and it was like my system was screaming at me to stop, and it did some really weird stuff. So all I had to do is kind of go in, set my merge vertices down low. For those of you that are familiar with 3D modeling packages, you can merge or kind of weld UV or your vertices together. So if you set kind of the if you set the proximity of those vertices low enough, basically what you can have is two vertices that are right on top of each other. You can grab all of the vertices in the entire model and say merge vertices, and it'll only merge the vertices that are right on top of each other, which is convenient for the type of thing that happens when you do this kind of weird conversion process. So basically, I cleaned everything up. I took all the vertices, merged them, the ones that were kind of separated out, and this is what I was left with, right? And then I did a separate, obviously, to separate all the different components of the geometry after those vertices had been merged. So the things that were truly supposed to have been separated, not just all faces, were actually still separated pieces of geometry. So what you're actually looking at right here, this is Everfrost Peaks, and what you're actually seeing is I believe the skybox. This top end here would be probably the skybox. Yeah, this whole thing right here would be a version of a skybox, and all of this other stuff is just the collision, right? So obviously we don't need a skybox that goes on the bottom of the world. We're gonna plan on using we're gonna be importing into UE4, and in UE4 we can just create pretty good solid terrain geometry. So here is kind of my thinking here. What I'm gonna do is just go ahead and disable the collision geometry, so now you got just the actual terrain features here. And what we'll do is go ahead and turn off the props and other features, so you can see kind of there was a piece of water geometry going through that stream. So now what we're left with is kind of two pieces of geometry that I've separated out. I separated the left version and the right version of this terrain, just so I can isolate stuff, make my system run a little faster, and it just makes it a little bit easier to work with. So right now, we're going to turn off the right side of Everfrost Peaks. So now we're just left with the kind of snowy, kind of cavern-esque, maybe not cavern, canyon, I guess is the right word. So you have this kind of canyon area where you kind of, the noob experience was pretty much everybody that started off in Everfrost Peak spent most of their time kind of fighting in this little area here, right? And how many times, if you've played EverQuest, did you get lost in these little canyons and get turned around and end up, headed towards the tundra out here? And so yeah, that was my original experience, like coming into EverQuest for the first time. That was my original experience, was this right here, right? Everfrost Peaks. So it's kind of, like I say, it's been kind of my thing. I'd really like to recreate this thing. And it's really what I expected from EverQuest 2. When that first came out, I was like, wow, that's going to be so cool to see what Everfrost Peaks would look like in a modern, engine. Back then, what was modern. And then, of course, when I got there, it wasn't quite like what I expected. It was nice in its own right, but I kind of wanted, when I expected that there was going to be familiar territory or familiar terrain, I expected that, it was going to be like the same zone layout, and it was going to kind of be roughly the same kind of thing. It was just totally different. A lot of people felt that way, I think. But, so yeah, anyways, back to what I'm doing here. So I've extracted everything, and I'm working with this kind of this 3D map data from the zone. And as you can see, it's got kind of it looks like probably was sculpted, or probably maybe just a some sort of a gradient map has probably been applied, and yeah, they built the kind of terrain out of one solid piece of geometry. We're going to approach this a little bit differently. In the engine, what I'm going to end up doing is kind of separating all the land features that kind of protrude out of the flat plane here, and just kind of treat them as separate models. This will allow the engine to cull things that aren't being used or visible to the camera at the time. So what I've gone ahead and done so far is just kind of created a, let's see where the original geo is. Okay, just kind of created a very simple kind of version of some of these cliffs, right? This isn't nowhere near complete. Obviously, the texturing is off, and some of the other stuff. But so this is kind of the idea behind what I plan on doing. I'll create a flat plane texture flat plane for the bottom level geometry, and the top level stuff or the protruding kind of geometry will be its own kind of separate piece of geometry. That way, like I say, cliffs that are, say, back here near the entrance of Hollis will actually be culled and will be unloaded from memory when you're way over here, and all you can see is, these two cliffs, right? So it'll allow for a little bit better optimization. We'll be able to use some higher polys, some nicer textures, and should maintain frame rates at even with higher visual fidelity. Now, something also that I kind of wanted to touch upon, just because I'm adding polys to this doesn't necessarily mean, or just because I'm increasing the visual fidelity on some of these pieces doesn't necessarily mean that every little piece is going to have a really high amount of polys, right? Sometimes you can increase fidelity with normal maps and clever use of additional pieces of geometry to kind of cut the profile a little bit so it doesn't look so tessellated against the sky. So that's essentially the approach that I'm going to take here. Some of these aren't very low poly right now. Like these snow caps right now are not game engine ready. Right now I kind of just plop these on top of here to try to get a good feel for whether this technique was going to work, and I think it will work. I got to touch on some other stuff. I might bring it into Mudbox and get some better sculpted kind of, or not Mudbox, ZBrush, and get some better sculpting going on for these snow drifts. So that's kind of my idea for this area. This area is going to be very it's going to be like snowblind, right? Like when you walk into Everfrost Peaks, it was very much like, especially this canyon type area, it was very much like you had a very snowblind. Everything's white. Everything's very very sterile looking, very snowy, like you were just out in the Arctic, right? So I'm going to keep to that theme. I'm not going to add too many. The idea occurred to me that I probably could go in here and make these more like real cliff mountains, cliff faces, right? And put maybe some rocks in here and some features inside of here, and maybe some ground type textures or something. And I kind of decided against that. I really, because I feel like if you add too much color to something, to this zone in particular, you're not going to keep the same kind of feeling to it. The whole feeling behind this was all that kind of bluish hued white, and I really want to keep to that theme. So by adding too much of like cliff faces and all this kind of dirty snow and all that stuff, I'm going to dirty up some of the snow, because I kind of want to add that realism. I mean, obviously you can't just have white stuff everywhere and have it kind of be featureless, right? And call it an upgrade in graphics. So I'm gonna stick to this. Kind of the idea that I went with was the kind of snow wall look. Basically, you can kind of see all the different layers, right? You can see all the different layers kind of right in here of each kind of snowfall, and then on the top you have more of a drifted kind of fluffy snow type of feeling, and that's kind of the direction I wanted to take it. I don't want it to be too real. I don't want to go the Elder Scrolls with it. I'm not trying to make it super ultra realistic. Even in like Landmark and Next, the graphics that they have planned for that aren't exactly like photoreal graphics. They're still very EQ style that kind of goes along with it, and it's almost kind of like almost a cartoony kind of feeling to it, but still has a kind of a little bit of realism also. So that's kind of the theme I'm going with here, a kind of a hybrid mix of kind of cartoony / realism style. So that's the direction I plan on taking this. That'll be this entire zone will end up looking like those cliffs will have those kind of features. Some of the other things in there, like trees, I'm gonna add realistic type looking trees, right? I'm not gonna go too cartoony with the trees, but rocks and cliffs and all that stuff, they're gonna have texture overhauls, and probably at the base of these cliffs, I'll probably add some kind of chunky snow or something to kind of represent what would happen if chunks have kind of just broken off, passed over the years or whatever. So that's pretty much it. The igloos, the little goblin igloos that are located all around there, they'll get a complete overhaul. Some of the other things that are in there, boulders, trees, the igloos. That's pretty much it for them. And also, this is going to be fun. I can't wait to get to it. The entrance to Blackburrow, right? The entrance to Blackburrow, I'm not sure how I'm going to treat that yet, but I think what I'm going to do is kind of make the walls dirt, like a strange, like they had just burrowed in the dirt, right? They just kind of look like dirty, kind of burrowing type of animals, and maybe there are some structural kind of things kind of holding it up and intermingled within that dirt kind of burrow. And so we'll kind of, I'm really looking forward, because I'm just doing the top layer, because if you remember, I have to do kind of, I want there to be a complete trip from Everfrost Peaks into South Canos. Right, so you're going to be going through the top layer of Blackburrow through that little cave system and into Canos Hills. And once you get past Canos Hills, you're going to go into South Canos. So from all of that, then I'm going to make each zone kind of from Everfrost to top layer of Blackburrow to Canos Hills to South Canos. That's going to take a long time, right? It's not going to be an overnight thing. It certainly isn't going to be, and everything is at the mercy of my schedule. So, but that's the order in which I'm doing everything, and I'll be able to touch on a little bit of everything. I'll be able to kind of cover all seasons, right? I'll have kind of a wintry season. I'll have kind of a almost a fall autumn type season of Blackburrow, and then in Canos there is that kind of summery kind of feel to everything. Canos, what I plan on doing with that area is adding a little bit more trees in some areas, right? Everything's, like I say, everything's going to stay the same. The collision's going to stay the same. Where there was a hill before, there's going to be a hill there now. But however, what I plan on doing is, where there's like clearly supposed to be a foresty type area, I'm going to add some more trees, right? I'm going to add like a little, it's going to be a little bit thicker. Maybe not a huge, super dark canopy, but it's gonna look a little bit more realistic. So it's gonna be fun times, man. It's gonna be while sticking to the kind of the same color palette. That's gonna be the challenge, right? The challenge is gonna be to take all of this stuff and not alter so much stuff that you've altered the entire look of everything. I want to keep the same color palette, use the same hues of greens and the same hues of blue, and everything's going to try to stay as true to the original design intent as possible. So that's where I'm at. Stay tuned. I'll have frequent updates here. Every time I get a piece of a zone done, or if I get to something that I think is interesting for you to watch, and I think people will be interested in watching, I'll upload it, and we'll see what happens here. Hopefully, I'm really excited to be doing this project. And I'm glad that I have the opportunity to dedicate so much of my time to it. Should be fun. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Until next time.